Daniel Disney, how are you?
I am very well, mate. Thank you so much for inviting me on today. I'm really excited to have our chat.
You have to be joking. It's me that's the grateful one. I'm talking to someone synonymous with sales in the UK and abroad, as we've been talking about recently. And this is one of the most anticipated interviews by me, and I'm sure the sales industry. It's just great to get an insight into what you think about sales, health, well-being. And I must say that when I came to you with the story of Wellity and what we were trying to do within the sales industry, which is to heighten the profile of mental health and well-being, I never expected it. You came straight back. You were straight back. So for that, thank you.
No, honestly, mate, it's a subject that is not talked about enough. I've worked in sales my entire working career. I've led hundreds of salespeople. I know how challenging sales is as a job, as a career. And I think what you're doing is brilliant. It's one of these subjects that a lot of people just keep inside and struggle. And there are some unfortunate negative realities to that. So I'm really keen to support you in what you're doing and really excited to dig into some of these subjects today and hopefully just make it a bit more normal and comfortable to talk about struggles and failures and challenges, and hopefully as a community come together to help each other, help everyone get through it.
It's almost like we all have them, isn't it? We all have these struggles. If you're human and you've got emotions and emotions go up and down, we all have them. Is there a reason, do you think, why sales, we find it fairly difficult to talk about, to air these things?
I think there's a couple of reasons, and it's funny because there's sort of two sides to this. I think a lot of sales is very much quite an ego profession. You know, it is an emotional roller coaster. You have the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And, you know, when you win, when you succeed, when you close a sale, it's no different to a racer getting across the finish line. That is success. That's an achievement. And that feeds those little ego creatures that we have inside of us. And I think because sales feeds that so much, when there are failures and struggles, it's almost a bigger fall because we're higher up, we fall further down. And, you know, it is difficult to talk about when you're facing a challenge, when you're struggling, when you've failed. But it's interesting because, and I know we touched upon this a couple of weeks ago when we sort of first caught up, but social media has kind of amplified this to the sort of wider world in the way that a lot of people portray perfect lives on social media. Most people are really scared to be honest and authentic on social media. Everything has to look great. Every picture is carefully planned. Every post is carefully written. And, you know, a lot of people make assumptions that the people they look up to, the people they see sharing content on social media are living this perfect life, this carefree, trouble-free, worry-free life. And, you know, I know from my own personal experience, I know from all the many people that I have worked with and get to work with, most of what you see on there is a snapshot, a split second of their life that is often, you know, surrounded by stress, challenges, struggle, failures. And, you know, I think it's hard in sales to talk about it. It's hard on social media to be honest and authentic about it. And again, I'm keen, hopefully, in this chat and to support you and Wellity in the sort of wider mission, because the more people that become more comfortable and open about talking about it, the better they're going to be in sales and the better they'll be in social media, because that's one of the biggest things in social media and in social selling is just being an authentic human being, not trying to be some sort of perfect robot. Just be yourself. So hopefully, yeah, through what we talk about today will help us get into that.
And a great deal of those goals are unachievable that we see on social media. Absolutely. Yeah, I've got to get your mug in. Sorry.
I was going to say, we have to talk about the mug before I slyly put it back down. Yes, I love sales. Yes, I have a mug that says I love sales. That's how sad I am.
You do love sales. And for context, for anyone who doesn't know you, I mean, who is Daniel Disney at the moment? I know you're going to be quite humble in what you say, but you know, you're very well known in the sales industry. I would say that you're the sales influencer. Would that be correct?
I guess I don't want to call myself that. I just love working in sales. Like I said, I've worked in it my entire career, and about 4 years ago, I started a little brand called The Daily Sales. Again, I just wanted to share content to help salespeople, whether it's funny memes that are going to make them smile during a tough day, whether it's a motivational quote or a educational blog. It was just built to help salespeople. So I run this. We're at just over 605,000 followers on LinkedIn now and growing. And then I also help sales people, sales teams and businesses leverage LinkedIn as a sales platform. So using it properly to properly social sell, not the spammy LinkedIn messages, but to use it to find the right people, have the right conversations and create the right opportunities. So that's me in a nutshell.
And when I'm talking to you, it's not just the influencer role we're talking to. We're obviously talking to a businessman and someone who has been in sales. So you must have brushed along a lot of the subjects that we're going to talk about, if not personally, within sales teams that you've led along the way.
Yeah, so I've, like I said, worked in sales my entire working career, and a good half of that was in sales leadership. So everything from sales supervisor, sales manager, head of sales, sales director, and I've led teams up to, I think 350 was my largest sales team. So I've experienced the journey myself, but I've also seen, again, how different people have traveled that journey. We all go through these things in different ways. So some of the challenges that I faced will be different to the challenges that others have faced. And I've, unfortunately seen people go through some really tough times. And as a leader, it's a whole different process in how you deal with that. And again, as a social media type person, you see this digitally as well. You see people going through these challenges online. And again, how can you support that and deal with that and bring it all into mix? LinkedIn, social media, it's just a new medium that is part of our world. So if you're a manager and you see someone in your team post about a challenge that they've had, they might not have said that to you. They might not have come up to you and told you that. You might not have found out any other way, but you've read it on LinkedIn. You then have essentially a responsibility to use that information to hopefully open that conversation and maybe help them through that situation.
Opens another conversation as well, which is how much responsibility do you have if you do see people posting on there positively or negatively, and how that then comes back into the workforce. It would be interesting rather to see how that turns out legislatively wise over the next few years. If you can see someone's done something that maybe goes against your brand or potentially illegal or whatever it is, how much that gets drawn back into the workforce. Have you got to be careful?
You have to be really careful. And, I get hired by companies who want to train their sales teams how to use LinkedIn. And a lot of the owners or the marketing departments, they're always scared. They're always resilient to give the individuals, the salespeople, the sales teams a voice on LinkedIn because they're scared of what they're going to say. And don't get me wrong, I've seen plenty of examples of individuals in any position in a company use LinkedIn and any other social network the wrong way. They say the wrong things. They troll people, or they say really negative things and post, inappropriate content. And, as an individual, you are responsible for what you do. As a company, you're responsible by, leading them on how to do it effectively. The key is, the example I always use is like when you go bowling. If you're not very good at bowling, most people have those little buffers up. Used to be inflatable balloons down the gutters. Now you get the
they do help though.
They do help. But that's what you need for your teams. You need to give them the guidance. Look, social media is a tool that you are either already using or maybe you're going to use. Is some do's and don'ts on how to use it properly. Not, I'm going to bowl for you, but I'm going to set you some guidelines to stop you going into the gutter and causing yourself, your personal brand or the business brand, any severe damage. I'll give you a quick example of this. Nothing too dramatic, luckily, but I had a sales director phone me last year, and their competitor just posted their new product on LinkedIn. Nice little picture, lovely little post about it. But one of their sales reps had written a comment on this post from the competitor saying, that product's nice, but ours is better because of X, Y, Z. And they were like, why did they do that? What should I do? Should I ask him to take it off? Do I leave it on? And, there's confusion from the leadership position as much as there is from the individual. But I think we're so used to using social media from a personal perspective that sometimes using it for work, it's a transition process. And most salespeople know not to badmouth. They can hopefully know not to badmouth their competitors in front of a prospect or customer. Social media is no different. So, but it's interesting. That's kind of, how some people's minds work.
It is interesting. Now, it is a form of social media, and we're going to come on to how that can portray you best, but also the slight dangers of, with mental health and everything else about trying to aspire to everything, where in these days where you can make up your own job title, you can make up your own business, you can create that brand. But before we go on to that, you've mentioned a really good thing, which is the link between LinkedIn and kind of social life. Now, I keep hearing, especially during this period of COVID, where a lot of people have maybe been off work and not too much to report work-wise, but still want to keep a presence. I keep hearing this thing, people have a moan on LinkedIn, it's not Facebook. Where are you? Where's the balance between how much you think you could do and how much you need to keep in line with, I suppose, the culture of LinkedIn?
It's an interesting thing. So, you know, a lot of people call them the LinkedIn police, these people that suddenly have this authority and voice on what is suitable for LinkedIn and not. Honestly, in the first year of putting out memes on LinkedIn, back when you really didn't find memes on LinkedIn, I got that pretty much on a daily basis. But the engagement counted it. So for the one person that said this isn't suitable for LinkedIn, hundreds of other people were clicking like and writing about how entertaining and funny it was. So, you know, take it with a pinch of salt. But it is true. There is a fine balance. LinkedIn is a professional social network. You are building a professional personal brand or representing a professional company. It's about finding that balance, and it's appreciating the professional side, but also the people buy from people side. And if you want to build a personal brand, if you want to be credible, you need to show you as an individual, not just you as a salesperson, not just you as a company or a marketer, whatever your role may be, but you as an individual. And so sharing insights into your world massively helped that. I'll give you a quick example. A couple of years back, I shared a post, and it was a picture of me and my youngest son, Joshua. And, you know, again, typically family posts tend to be, you know, frowned upon by the LinkedIn police. But this was a picture of me and him. I was driving a little boat down in Gunwharf. The story behind it was what made it relevant. So that week, Monday to Friday, I was chocker between 6 in the morning to about 11 at night. I was working every single day. And for that entire week, I didn't get to see my kids. And so that weekend, I dedicated to them. And we went out, we did all these wonderful things, including driving these wonderful little boats. And the message in the post was sort of relating to how a lot of people, when they're driven by success, trying to build a business or trying to be successful, it can be hard to maintain that balance. And sometimes there are costs. Sometimes the costs are time with families. And I've seen and met plenty of successful people that unfortunately realize that a bit too late. And, you know, whilst they achieve their dreams, they lose a lot throughout that time. And so what I wanted to write in that post was to sort of showcase that whilst I am very driven and dedicated to you know, being the best that I can be, I'm also very driven and dedicated to be the best dad I can be and to make sure I keep that balance. Now, the post did a few things. One, it showed that I work hard. I'm very determined and dedicated to my work, my customers, and my business. But it also showed Dan, the dad. It showed me as a human being. And that's such an amazing thing to be able to show your prospects, your customers, your colleagues, your peers, that they get to see you something slightly different. And so when I say the balance, you can hopefully see in that post, you kind of get the best of both worlds. They get to see the professional side. It's relevant to LinkedIn and people in my network, but it also allows me to almost open up the curtains a little bit and let people into my world a little bit more and get to see me as a human being. So right now, yeah, a lot of people aren't as busy or, you know, doing as much work as perhaps they would have been doing normally. So use it as an opportunity to there's still tons of great content you could create relevant to your industry, your customers and your prospects, but use it as a chance to give an insight. I did a post at the start of lockdown where I can't remember how many tips it was. I'll try and find it so you can share it with everyone who's watching this. But it was content ideas. And one of them was take a picture of your home working office space, because people want to see that. They're curious about it. And it was great to see lots of people doing it, and the engagement they got was fantastic because people got to see a little bit more of an insight.
And is that why videos is so powerful now in general, but also in this period? Because look, I've been into CEOs' living rooms, garden sheds, bedrooms. You wouldn't get that sort of I can see you in your working environment. We're talking about your children and the weekend. That's a really nice arena to do business in, isn't it? Once there's kind of barriers come down, you use a word which I absolutely love, which is normal. Like, just be normal. And if you've got children, it's natural to talk about your kids. You wouldn't have a meeting in the street with someone and not talk about things that you're familiar with.
No one wants that cold transaction, especially in B2B sales. You know, we're not looking to just click and buy something. We're looking to build a relationship. We're looking for trust. We're looking for something long-term. And those long-term relationships are built on a human connection, about being a human being. So yeah, if you can let people into your world It's only a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not breaking news, is it? That you have your best relationships and conversations with your mates, whether it be down the pub, playing tennis, on a rugby pitch, whatever. It's because you don't have those walls and barriers up. And yet sometimes we, especially in sales, you go through years of creating a game face, right? This is how I think about it, because you cut your teeth at the bottom and you're being told what to do. You're a junior. And as you go up and you get this sort of kudos and responsibility and everything else on top of you, it changes your character. But it doesn't change your character, but it changes your way that you think you've got to be, which, heaven forbid, then makes it slightly unauthentic. And before you know it, you don't quite know where you are.
It's really true. I call it autopilot. Salespeople go into this autopilot mode where either you tell them to sell, or as they climb up the hierarchy, they make these assumptions on what they're meant to be. So when you go up, and again, perfect examples, when you go up to someone and say, sell me this pen. You tell someone to sell you this pen, 9 out of 10 will start to do exactly what sales isn't, and they'll start talking about the amazing made up features and benefits of this pen. Oh, it's an amazing pen. It does everything you want it to do. It writes in gold. It shoots lasers. It makes your wishes come true.
I do want one though.
But the reality is, that's not how you sell the pen. Now, if you go up to someone and say, you know what, I'm having real trouble with this pen. Can you help me find a new pen? Whole mindset shift. And instead of trying to sell a pen, they start to ask questions. They start to listen. And this whole autopilot is something that holds a lot of salespeople back, where they think they act the way they need to act to sell. So when they go out and talk to people, they're not interested in the person. They're only interested in selling something. That's what they think they have to do. And it's about trying to shift that mindset to stop thinking and obsessing about selling stuff. Actually go out there and build relationships, go and help people, get to know people, look for the right people. That's a whole different world of selling, but that's where most of the success sits. I think, again, it's just opening people's eyes to realize that you're not just a machine. You're not some sort of sales robot that needs to go out and constantly punch numbers and hit targets. You're out there to go and have conversations, real conversations with real people to solve real problems with your product. And that's a much nicer thing to do. And actually, when you start to do that, it starts to shed some of that negative pressure that a lot of salespeople carry. All this fear of, got to hit these numbers, I've got to make this amount of calls, and I've got to hit this number of opportunities and this number of conversions, and God knows how many numbers a lot of sales teams are burdened with. You know, it's natural, I think, for a lot of salespeople to take that pressure. And what happens? You put all that pressure on a salesperson, they just pass it on to the customers. This is why salespeople put pressure on their customers. This is why they send spammy messages and constantly follow up. You know, it kind of comes from the top. I'll show you one of the worst stories I saw of a sales manager. And a sales rep was out on the field selling a telecom solution, went and met, was supposed to be a couple, but the husband was out, so it was just the wife. Wife sat down, listened, said, yeah, really, really interested, but I can't make a decision until my husband's back and we've talked through it. You know, common objection, and a real natural one, nothing to, you worry about. So the sales rep drove back to the office, got in, sales manager came up to him and said, how'd it go? Did you get it? Did you get the deal? He was like, no, the husband wasn't in. They're going to talk later today. The sales manager turned around and said, no, that's not acceptable. Drive back there right now and don't come back until you get the deal signed. And the sales rep was like, but the husband, he said, that's not an excuse. You need to get the deal signed, and made them go back. The sales manager went with them. They lost the business. That person was never going to buy from them. And the woman said at the end of it, look, I probably would have bought from you. Yeah. You just waited. But the fact that you've come in has just given me a really bad insight into your company. And what scares me the most is, like, that's a really true story. Like, I wish it was a made up one, but I remember the horror in that sales rep's eye sort of sharing it with me, because, they were early on in their career. They were looking forward to a really prosperous career in sales, and, stuff like that scares people. I think this goes up the ladder as well to senior leadership. You and I deal a lot with senior leaders now, domestically and abroad. And us change as well as they go up the ladder sometimes. Now, I think of my best bosses are the ones that, you said something very interesting, that when salespeople lose the interest in people and just start selling, that's when it falls down. When senior leaders lose that interest in people, but have just become a carrier of messages from the top to the bottom, that again, my best leaders or managers that I've had in my career are the ones that have really got me as a person. Is that something that you come across? 100%. I've had a lot of bad managers, and I've shared some of the stories on LinkedIn, which, you know, unfortunately connect with a lot of people, which is sad because it means there are lots of others out there. And it is quite rare to find a good sales manager, or a good sales leader of any position, good VP of sales, good CEO. But when you do find them, I mean, you're talking worlds apart. They are more focused on you as an individual. When you come in the morning, they're not asking, the first question isn't, what have you got coming in today? What's your plan for today? It's, how was your evening? How was your family? How was your weekend? You know, they care about you as an individual. They're invested in you. They're always trying to progress you. They want to see you succeed. Whereas on the flip side, I've had sales managers that just want to hold you back. They just want you to stay in that spot and do exactly what you're told to do. And if you do anything different than what you're told to do, you get in trouble. And again, I mean, autopilot's probably one of the best references I can kind of put it as. When you become a leader, a lot of people, again, flip on this sort of management autopilot, right, where it's, you know, the pressure, right? I've got a number to hit. So, you know, it's my way or the highway. I'm going to do what I, you know, and a lot of them may have had success in their careers, but achieving success as an individual salesperson doesn't give you the blueprint for being success as a sales leader. And again, two very sort of different worlds. But yeah, I mean, a bad sales manager is an anchor to a business. It will only ever hold them back from sort of progressing. And same for salespeople. I've seen a lot of great, talented salespeople get broken by bad sales leaders, and they don't last long. They go off to other companies, often competitors, where they then become, you know, very successful.
When you talk about this, the pressure of the sales industry, and I think that's one of the biggest things against well-being, is that your demands are always on a trajectory. They're always going up, aren't they? No one's ever going to say, right, we want you to start there and go down. So they're always on the up, but your emotions go like that. So there are going to be times when you're down here, when life's, you know, giving you a good clip around the face, but you've got to be up there. This has to be sustainable. Now, the difference with sales is you can't just turn up and show up there. You might as well either just not go in because you're so protective of your game face, or you wait until you're right up there again, which puts enormous pressure. So the gulf is bigger from the bottom to where you're expected. Now, either expectations, because someone knows you as a person, come down to meet with where you are, so to limit that gulf, or I suppose that's why people burn out.
Yeah, expectations are a tough thing. There's a great guy, a UK-based motivational speaker, one of the best I've seen, Gavin Ingham, and his key thing is I am 10. And I mean, his talks are fantastic, so motivational, but he sort of talks about how most people tend to go to work at a 5 or a 6. And actually, what can you do? Start each day and become 10, become the best version of yourself. And I guess the interesting way I look at it is that we are essentially a machine. You know, we have a body, we have a mind, and like anything out there, like a car, they need to be fueled, they need to be looked after. And I think a lot of this is about self-discovery. It's about understanding yourself. If we start first from an individual level, then when you get to leadership, it's about understanding your team as individuals. But you need to understand yourself. What do you need to be the best version of you? Is it a run in the morning? Is it listening to some music? Is it listening to a podcast? And I've literally tried so many different things over the years to try and find what sets me up for the right day. What I learned very early on was if I'm late, that puts me on a downward trend for the entire day. I struggle if I'm ever late to work. So got to the point where I'll literally be an hour early for work. And that set me up for so much more. Yeah, it cost me an hour of my time, but my God, could I do so much more? And I was always ahead. And so little things like that, you know, I like to listen to, I have a set list of music I like to listen to, podcasts I find massively, you know, inspiring and motivational. And then I get to work or get to wherever I'm going, and I'm all filled with the right type of energy. And I guess that kind of self-discovery can help you know your limits, know what you need, know when you need it, you know, because it's an emotional roller coaster. You have your highs, you have your lows, you'll crash. But again, so many salespeople come into the office with their cans of Red Bull and Monster, chugging that away. By lunchtime, they've totally crashed, lost all interest, and they've barely got any energy to do any type of activity.
That's my next point. That is my next point. Does the sales environment allow for well-being? Or when you're in, and I know the industry is changing, I'm really happy to see it changing, rather like professional sports is changing and they're becoming more dedicated and there's an art to it. But is there a bit when, you know, there are 6 guys in drinking their Monster or drinking beers, you know, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, having a meeting where you go, ooh, well-being. All right. Oh, you got to go for what? A run? You do what? You listen to a podcast. Look at Daniel listening to a podcast. Do you know what I mean? Is it set up, or does it need reinventing? Do we have to break it to make it, or can we adapt?
That's a really good question. And I don't know about the whole whether we need to break it to make it or whether it can be adapted. All of this really does stem from leadership. And if you've got a leader that is leading by that example, then it becomes the norm. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people that do frown upon it. And I laugh because I went through that through most of my sales career. Unfortunately, I was the nerdy one that liked to read books, that liked to listen to stuff, that liked to try and improve. And, unfortunately, that was the minority. I represented the minority in a lot of the teams that I was in or even led, and you do become slightly separated, because of that. I don't hold any negative for it, because as long as people are happy and they're achieving what they want to achieve, then there's nothing to say what's right or wrong. Maybe that type of culture, if they're happy in it, fine. What I have found is that a lot of people in that type of culture aren't happy in reality, and it's not sustainable. As you mentioned, burnout comes a lot quicker down that road than it does when you're a lot more sort of self-aware and self-preserving. But yes, there are a lot of companies out there that lead it now. It is a lot more normal now as well. I go into a lot of companies now, and the environment they have is, really adapted to fueling their sales teams in all areas, from the food that they have available. So many companies now will have healthy food on tap that they can, take and use. They'll have plenty of rest facilities, bookshelves for reading, quiet zones, entertainment, and we're not just talking about your Facebook offices and your LinkedIn offices, but even a lot of smaller companies now are starting to make sure that they create these environments instead of what, again, certainly was a lot before my time, but even in the early stages of my time it's almost like caged hens. You literally had a desk and it was just a plain office, someone pacing up and down, and you're there just laying eggs or making calls as such. There's
a book title in there somewhere.
It's so ironic you said
Laying
that.
eggs.
Someone was going to write a book. Someone I met years ago was going to write a book about, I think it was free range cold calling or something like that.
Yeah.
Genius. Anyone wants to take it, because they never actually went with that title. But that is what's working in sales now. That's much more built for long-term success. And it's the same sales leadership principles, the same as the sales principle. A lot of salespeople go out there looking for the quick wins. Right, going to win this deal, and that's all they focus on. They get the deal, but they do it in such a negative way that they don't get a long-term customer from it. And a lot of sales managers are so desperate to try and squeeze their sales teams to hit 1 month's target or 1 year's target. They don't think about the sustainable reality of whether they can keep that person for years to come. And I think now a lot more leaders are opening their eyes to, okay, I'm not just looking for, because it's expensive and time consuming hiring and training salespeople. I want this person for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. What do I need to do to facilitate that, instead of what do I need to do to hit my number this month, this quarter, this year?
Yeah, and that might be the messaging that you have to go to a CFO about, rather than it's like, oh, what are we doing investing in well-being? No, we need to get income up. But it's only that conversation, that education piece around onboarding and recruitment and staff churn and everything else that makes well-being it's slowly climbing that agenda. I think that when it especially related to the bottom line as well.
Yeah, a salesperson is no different to a sports person. We have a job to do. And for us to do that job at our best, we need certain things. Most of the professional footballers out there, the top athletes in any sport, you look at the things that they have around them. You look at what they have to be the success that they are. Nutrition, mindset, coaching, practice, training, so much goes into them to make them successful. And salespeople are no different. The best salespeople out there, they need all these type of things to help them get to that place. We all need a certain amount of support, training, education, motivation. I always love Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We all have it. We all have these needs, but so many companies don't look at it like that. A salesperson is a commodity. They're an item. They're hired for a job. For them to get paid, they need to do that job. And yeah, I mean, Simon Sinek's one of my favorite sort of speakers in that space of sort of, looking after your staff, being an effective leader. And he really pushes. One of his best analogies, he did a lot of work with the armed forces and military in America. And he says it's two worlds apart. If you're in the armed forces out there, you're brothers and sisters. Whereas you go into the corporate world and you're trying to get ahead of anyone and everyone. It's, every man for himself. And one of his books is literally Leaders Eat Last. In the military, the leaders are the last ones to eat. in the corporate world, the leaders are the first ones to eat. And it's, again, just changing our perception and trying to look at the bigger picture. It's so easy to just focus on something small, something immediate. What do I need to do to hit my target this month? And we opened our eyes a little bit and thought, it was the whole give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, teach a man to fish and he'll eat for a life. It's, that type of thing.
And you deal, well, obviously with a lot of sales leaders. Do you find, and with especially with new generations coming through and everyone paying a bit more attention to their own health and well-being, that there's maybe a different currency? It used to be very much, where's my pay increase? What am I getting this year? He's got 5%, or she's got 6%, I want 10%. But actually the new currency, especially after COVID, may be flexi days, holiday, a bit more allowance on their well-being, some more professional development, some more personal development. Do you see the currencies changing?
It is massively. I mean, I think a lot of younger generations that are now coming into the industry, millennials and other, generations coming in, have a lot different needs to previous generations. It's not just how much commission can I make, can I have an unlimited OTE? They want more than that now. They're not just financially driven. They're looking for titles. They're looking for progression. They're looking for development. A lot of younger generations, ironically enough, are looking a lot further ahead than some of the previous ones. And as a leader, I mean, I had this, one of my last leadership positions before I went sort of self-employed. I had a lot of young salespeople. They were so hungry, and unfortunately to some negative effects, because I think, and I was the same when I was younger, sometimes if you get too ambitious too early, you can't see that you need more experience or more knowledge or more results before you can take that next step. And I had quite a few young aspiring salespeople that thought they were ready for sales leadership and couldn't quite see that they needed sort of more. So they are really hungry. And as a sales leader, that presents different challenges. They don't just want a pay rise. They don't just want a bonus. You can give them that, but it's not going to keep them happy. It's not going to satisfy them. They need to look at, okay, what can you do to try and make sure they are motivated and kept on that right focused path? And that's where things like proper training, a proper route of progression. So, right, it's going to take 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, but I'm not just going to tell you that now, and then we're going to talk again in 12 months. Let's map this out. They want the roadmap. They want the route planned. Okay, I need to do this by then. What are you going to provide for me? What help and support? That's all they want. If you could give them that, be amazed at what they'll do for you and what great results they're able to achieve. But you just need to hold their hand a little bit. But you're right, it's a different currency. And unfortunately, our sales leaders, who naturally are probably from a previous generation, have worked in sales for a long time, and hence why they're in senior leadership in sales positions, come from a world that's not like that. Come from a world where it was predominantly about money and success. And so they apply that same, what they were brought up in, they apply that, and it's trying to adapt. Some adapt very well, some don't, and part of the challenge.
And it starts right at the interview, I think, in sales, because in what other industries you've not got so much of a back catalogue, because as you're only as good as your last month or year potentially, unless you've got a massive logo behind you. But you turn up to the interview and you start, I'm the best, this is why you should hire me, I'm so much better than them, this is me. And I mean, you start there, you can't really go too much up there. And of course you start on day one and you go, I've got no idea what I'm doing. I don't know where anything is. I've got to ask someone where the station is. I literally must look a fool. So you start 20 yards behind the start line after you've overpromised yourself to get in. And you also have these things on social media, as I'm sure that portrays perfection, and that you should actually be able to do this really quickly. So it starts right in the interview that we're the pressure.
It does, and it ties into something that is, again, equal in the sales process. A lot of salespeople go out there and they overpromise because they're so desperate for the sale. They've got numbers to hit. They're so keen to win the business. So they overpromise. And then it becomes very hard to deliver their promise, let alone, over-deliver. I've always been an under-promise, over-deliver type person, which I think is way more effective. But again, it comes down to something that's sort of, really important. We kind of talked about this before, and it's that level playing field. A lot of salespeople, if we look at the interview first, when you go into an interview, a lot of salespeople that go into interview, they're so desperate for the job. They'll say anything that they think is going to get them that job, how amazing they are, how many times they hit target. And unfortunately, a lot of sales interviews, certainly in my experience, maybe 40-50% is truth. The rest of it is exaggerated or kind of made up, as you later find out. But they're so desperate for it, they're so desperate to impress you, that they just come out with a lot of waffle. And you see it in sales as well. A lot of salespeople go to making cold calls, go to meetings, sending emails, and they will say and do whatever the customer wants. They will say anything they think is going to help them get the sale, because they're down here and the prospect's up there. The interviewee's down here and the interviewer's up there. And, you know, I'm not a massive follower of any particular methodology, but one of the principles from Sandler methodology that's always connected with me really well is leveling that playing field. So being equal. So when you go to an interview, you're not desperately trying to, you know, impress them and convince them to take you on. You're interviewing them as well. You want to know, what are they going to do for you? What environment have they got? What perks, what professional opportunities, what development, what training? You know, they should be sort of selling to you as much as you're selling to them. And it's the same when you go with your customers, the same with a you know, buyer-seller interaction. You're trying to show them what you can do to help them, but you also want to qualify them. You want to make sure that they're the right person for you to sell to, because you don't want to sell to the wrong person. You don't want to sell them something that's not going to help them, that they don't need. Level that playing field, and it just creates a massive change in
We're so
mindset.
much on the same page on that one. So much on the same page. That subservient versus someone who you think, you know, is in charge. And I think, you know, any interview, talk to them as a person. Like we discussed last time, quite a good leveler was when you go into a boardroom, whoever it is, for an interview or you're selling your company or wherever, try and imagine what everyone might have been like in their character at school.
Yeah.
So they would have been the quiet one. They would have been the one that had blown their nose. They would have been the one that got put in detention. They would have been there. And suddenly you're seeing everyone as really, you know, level. This is going to bring me on to my next point, which I know you're big on, is authenticity. How do you create an authentic interview then, when people will wear what you think they might want to wear, and it allows them to talk? And then also, once we've gone through the interview process, we'll go on to authenticity on a social level, and whether actually that can be bad for you, or oh look, I'm firing about 30 questions at you. Let's start with the interview and then we'll go on to authenticity in a social.
I'm keeping track of them all. Authenticity, I am massively passionate about, and there's a fine line between being authentic and being professional. I think one of the biggest misconceptions out there at the moment, and again, this is fueled by social media, unfortunately, is this feeling that being authentic means you could do and say whatever you want because you're just being authentic. And if no one likes it, off they go. And there are a lot of people, I mean, the closest thing I have to this kind of subject is people swearing on social media. You know, a lot of people justify it by saying they're being authentic, and it connects with people and people buy from them because they're so authentic. And you know, I saw someone, a salesperson, lose a huge customer because they swore on social media. Now, did they need to swear? No. Did it make them any less authentic if they hadn't sweared? No. They didn't have to do it. And for that individual customer, it offended them massively. And they would have lost that customer probably for the long term. You don't need to swear to be authentic. The same way as if you go to an interview, you don't need to be dressed in what you'd wear at home to be authentic. You can still dress smart. You can still try and make a good professional impression. But by being authentic, it just means about being yourself, being relaxed, not being too pressured into being something that you're not. And I mean, I did in every single interview that I've had, I've always walked into that interview with the ability to be able to walk out not needing that job. And when I say that needing, yes, we all probably need the job. We all need the sale. But we can't be desperate for it that we can't walk out without winning it. We can't be that emotionally attached to it. You have to walk in there and want them to justify the role to you as much as you want to justify you for that role. So it's that balance of, yes, I'm trying to make a good impression. I'm trying to be professional. I'm trying to win the role or win the business, but I'm going to be me. Two phrases I've always used. I've used this in pretty much every single sales conversation and every single job interview that I've had. I am a cards on the table, transparent person. And that is who I am. I will always put everything on the table, and I will always be as transparent as I can be. Nothing hidden, no ulterior motives. You know, if I'm going for a role, it's because I really would love to work for that company. I feel I have a lot to offer for that company. If I'm speaking to a prospect or a customer, it's because I genuinely believe that they can benefit from what it is I'm selling, whatever product or service it is that I'm selling. And I will always be transparent. If I think there is better options, then I will direct you to those better options. If I don't think I'm the right fit for the role, then that's fine. This doesn't have to be a negative thing. There doesn't have to be any tears. We're all grown-ups here, and we can move away from it. If I can recommend anyone to the role, I will. It's about just relaxing. Again, leveling that playing field, but just being yourself. Have fun. You know, if you go to an interview, like one of the best interviews I ever had, and I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of salespeople over the years. One of the best interviewees that came into one of my interviews, and it's, I think, the only person who's ever started off with this sentence. But they walked in, sat down, they looked me in the eyes, and they said, "I'm not a natural salesperson." No one has ever walked into an interview and ever said that. 99% of the time, they come in and they tell me how amazing they are at selling, and they show me this amazing CV. I mean, Christ, if they were that good, I'm not sure why they're looking for a new role, but they're so amazing. But this person sat down in front of me and said, "Look, I'm not a natural salesperson. Selling does not come easy to me, but I love it. But I want to be successful. And so I work harder than anyone else in that team to make sure I deliver my results." And they were so honest about it. They said, "Look, I may not be your number one top seller, but I guarantee I'll be in the top 2 or 3. I guarantee I will hit my targets." And he was able to show, which I was able to then back up, an amazing, credible sales career over the sort of most recent years. But I loved that authenticity, that honesty, that just walking in, being honest, not trying to be something they're not.
Being normal. I mean, you've only got to pull examples like we did with the boardroom table about who would have been picking their nose at school or whatever. You pick it up and put it into a different environment. If you put that interview process into a different environment, and we talk about dating, would you, when you're just, you know, you're face to face, you're on that first one, there's maybe a dinner table and a bottle of wine in between you, but you're essentially trying to sell yourself. And you go in and you say, "I'm fantastic. I am brilliant. I was school leader. I was this. I can bench press 600 down the gym. And I can run faster than your last boyfriend." I mean, it would just be off-putting, wouldn't it?
It would. That's one of the funniest examples I think I've ever heard, but that's exactly what it's like. And again, autopilot. Often people do this without thinking. They don't go in there thinking, "This is definitely going to make me successful." It's just this autopilot. This is what I need to do or say to get what I want to get, whether it's the job, whether it's the sale, whether it's the girlfriend or boyfriend. You know, it's that sort of autopilot. Sometimes we just need to switch autopilot off, stop trying to be something we're not, and just be honest. Be honest with our successes, be honest with our flaws. Everyone has flaws. There is no one that I've met in my entire career that's perfect. Even the most amazing authors and experts that sit on this wonderful bookshelf behind me, none of them are perfect. I've met and spoke to most of them. They all have their challenges. They all have their struggles. They all have their stresses. We are all human beings, and sometimes just need to relax a little bit, not feel always this, you know, need to impress and be perfect. Just be human.
Okay, because I agree with you massively on that. Never chase perfection because it's unachievable. Is there an extreme to that? You and I talk about that there's no need for extremes. If on the other side, is there a limit to how much you can put on social media, maybe for your profile, about how bad things are going? Is there a way that that could be portrayed professionally?
Yeah, so I mean, again, balance is the key in pretty much any area of your life. If you want to eat healthy, you're allowed to eat some bad things, but all within balance. If you're going to gorge on chocolate, then of course, you know, there's going to be repercussions to that. It's all about balance. And yes, on social media, you know, if you are too open, if you are too negative, unfortunately, with your challenges and your struggles, then it's not going to have the most positive of impacts. People want to see you. They want to see you vulnerable. They want to see you as a human being. But equally, if you're trying to win business, you still need to show resilience and strength and determination and confidence. You know, someone's not going to buy from someone who's not confident in themselves or who's going through any and all kinds of troubles and challenges and is constantly negative on social media. I've seen a few people, unfortunately, that, you know, they open up, which is good. They get a bit of engagement from it. So they like it. They think, okay, great, people love this. So then everything they do is all about whatever it was, that challenge that they may have had. And, you know, overcoming a challenge is amazing. And my hat off to anyone who goes through any tough experience and comes out the other side. But life is full of them.
Yeah.
Overcoming one doesn't make you an expert, or, you know, doesn't mean you need to tell that story over and over. Life is full of these challenges, and your audience, people on social media, they want to see your journey. They want to see the highs and lows, but they want to see you moving, not just stopping at any given point. So yes, it's about finding that balance. You know, I did it when I started speaking about 3 years ago now. The first time I got on stage was the single scariest moment of my entire entire life. And
oh God, yes, yeah.
I think I shared this story with you before, but I was due. This was my first ever keynote. It was at the Sales Innovation Expo in London. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. First time I'd ever spoken. Full stop. No previous practice, no training, nothing. I was invited. I thought, yeah, this sounds like a great idea. I like the idea of it. Got to the day, and about half an hour before I was due to get on stage, full meltdown, full body and psychological shutdown, to the point where I had the Uber app open on my phone, booking a taxi to pick me up right now and take me home, because I did not want to get on stage and do that talk. Now, that was one of the biggest challenges I've had. And luckily, I was able to find someone that I knew, and they were able to just talk and listen and just provide just a couple of reassuring words that, you know what, you'll be fine. It's going to be okay. Managed to help me build up the confidence, a bit of walking, bit of water, calm myself down a bit, managed to get up on step. I mean, those steps were heavy steps, climbing up onto that stage. But as soon as I started speaking, absolutely loved it. And I shared that story because it allowed me to show that I was scared, that I was nervous, that, a lot of people will post those pictures. Yeah, great keynote today. It was amazing. Right. And you think, life is good for them. But what you don't sometimes realize is what goes on before. And I've shared the stage with some amazing speakers, and 6 or 7 out of 10 of them full of nerves before they go on there. Some people that you think know, they know exactly what they're doing. They've been speaking for years. Some of them really have to psych up to get on stage.
Because everyone's normal.
We're all human beings.
Yeah.
So yes, it's just understanding that it's okay to share some of those challenges, but then making sure you're still sharing lots of valuable stuff and being normal and confident. It's finding that balance. Be vulnerable, be human, but also share the good stuff in a good balance. If you're too much in one side, it's limited. If you're too much on the other side, it's limited. Sweet spot is right in the middle, where you are a human being. People see you as authentic, but they also get to see some of the cool stuff that you get to do as well.
Because you talk about introverts and extroverts as well, don't you? And how you can have different characters. You can be an introvert behind the scenes, maybe, and you switch it on and you become an extrovert. And you also talk about sometimes egos. It's quite a big thing in the sales industry, and it can hide insecurities a lot of the time.
Yeah, so I'm generally an introvert, which I think a lot of people find surprising, because if you've ever seen me speak on stage, if you've ever seen me train a classroom, I'm a completely different person. I own that space and I love it. I thrive on that environment. But in a normal room, I'm not desperate for attention. I don't want to be the center of attention 24/7. I don't feel the need to talk above everyone else. I quite like to just sit in the background and listen and be a part of the team. And I remember I spoke at an event. It was my first international event in the US last year. And the day before the sort of speaking was happening, the whole event was happening, everyone was invited to a baseball match, which was so cool. One of the most funnest experiences I've had. And I remember after I'd done my talk, someone came up to me and said, I had no idea the person I saw at the baseball match was you on stage, because at the baseball match, I'm quiet. I'm talking to individuals, but I'm not center of attention. Get me on stage and I make sure I do my job well. And so, yeah, introvert, extrovert, ego, it's all about balance. I've seen a lot of salespeople, that are very heavy in the extrovert area and very heavy in the ego area. And not only can it be detrimental to the team, but it can be detrimental to them. I remember one sales rep in particular, my God, this person celebrated any tiny win. I remember they'd be making cold calls every day. Anytime they got a meeting, the phone would be slammed on the receiver. They'd get up, they'd get their imaginary baseball bat, and they'd go, batting it out of the park, and they'd swim around the office, as if it was their greatest success, when all they'd done is booked a meeting, which is great, a success nonetheless. But unfortunately, because they exerted all of that energy, that ego, psychologically for them, they won the fight. And what they were very, unfortunately, they've struggled with a lot, was then the after that, and actually following it through and closing the deal. And ego can be our enemy. If we feed our ego too early on, if we feed it too much, it can hold us back from doing the work. If you've finished the race in your head at the point of booking a meeting or at the point of sending a proposal, that can stop us from doing all the work needed to get it across the line. And so we've got to be very aware of ego in sales. We need confidence. We need belief in ourselves. We need belief in our companies and our products, but we also need that layer of humbleness and that ability to want to serve. It's one of the things I think is missing from sales right now, is this need and desire and want to serve people. When someone comes into a meeting, you know, how quickly do you want to make them a tea or coffee? Make sure they're comfortable, make sure the room's the right temperature, make sure they've got what they need. How much do you want to serve your customers to make sure they're happy? And again, ego can sometimes hold us back from that.
Well, yeah, because if we're talking about that trajectory as well, we've always got to be a high performing up there. And either that comes down to accommodate normal life. If you're down there and you're perhaps not, you're like a bit of a fish out of water, you're not as trained, or you've got imposter syndrome, or actually you've just managed to fluke a new job and you don't have the toolbox to get you up there. A lot of the time it is ego. I've been listening to meetings sometimes where people think if they talk louder, they put the other person down. They've got no substance. You put that, if you write down what they say, there's nothing there on paper, but because of the way they come across with their movements and their gestures and their hands and the way they look and everything else, you can fake that a bit. And that is ego. But the problem is that you can't sustain that, because the minute you get behind closed doors, you probably do end up at the wrong end of a bottle of red, or you do end up with an unsustainable lifestyle, because you can't run sales purely on ego, can you?
You can't. And I'm going to use this as an opportunity to share the story that I haven't shared, I think, publicly before, but one that I think really taps into this and what we're kind of just talking about. And there's two sides to this. One is exactly what we're talking about now in terms of letting your ego sort of drive your sales career. But the other side of it is the unfortunate challenges that sometimes leaders and leadership faces. So, many years ago, I unfortunately had to fire one of my closest friends. And, we started off at the same level in the sort of industry and worked together for years. And I unfortunately climbed the ladder faster than they did, but for most of that journey, it was absolutely fine. And actually they were pretty responsive, when I did become a leader. Now, this particular person, unfortunately, was a very ego-driven, extroverted salesperson who did, for unfortunately a lot of their career, struggle to hit targets and hit numbers, because again, they celebrated success a lot more early on. They weren't a hard worker, nor were they really focused on serving their customers. So it got to the point where, again, I tried everything in my power to try and help them, to coach them, to train them, to give them anything and everything I could to try and help them change their mindset, change their approach to sales, to help them become more successful. But after a long time, and it was dragged out way longer than it probably should have done, it got to the point where I had too much pressure above me. Then unfortunately I had to let that person go. Now, for them, it was their ego that unfortunately caused that situation, because they just couldn't accept their flaws or the responsibility to their flaws. For me as a leader, that was one of the toughest, if not the toughest experience I've ever had, where, you have to fire someone that you're close to. Had dinners with our families and, went through so much together, having to sit in front of them and do that. There was tears, it was tough. Mentally, it was tough, and it was a horrible experience. And so a few things that I learned from that. Number one is, for their perspective, always try and be open to your failures and your struggles. We all have them. I have them. It's not been a smooth ride to the top. Trust me, I've had as many failures as I've had successes, but I always make sure I take ownership for it and take accountability for it. If I make a mistake, I try my hardest not to make that same mistake again. I will listen to criticism. I will learn from my errors. And this person in particular really struggled with that. It took them a couple of years before they were able to actually, say, yeah, okay, I understand that now. But also from a leadership perspective, you've got to be prepared for some of these situations. Doesn't mean if you don't have friends or you don't class your team as your friend, doesn't mean that, I've had it before where you're in some of these conversations where you have to let people go and they open up about these horrible situations that they're in personally. And, you suddenly feel this immense amount of guilt. People that are going through various things like illnesses, divorces, financial troubles. And again, sometimes keeping that all bottled in can lead to a lot of failure and struggle. But again, as a leader, it's all about understanding responsibility and what you can do to maybe help. As a leader, if you haven't identified those challenges, were you asking the right questions? Were you putting the right time in to get them to open up about those things? And as the individual, could you have opened up more? Could you have asked for help? Could you have swallowed your pride a little bit and actually voiced some concern to someone in the business. We each have to take accountability. There's no point pointing fingers. The individual could point to them and say, oh, as a leader, you didn't ask me, you didn't put the time into me. And the leader could say, but you didn't tell me. We each have to kind of put our hands up and look at, okay, what could any of us have done differently to maybe have avoided that negative situation? But it was just a kind of a good way to bring a bit of flesh to the whole ego piece.
It does. And I think ego's a thin veneer, and I think it gets thinner the higher up the ladder you go. And my mum used to say, be careful, because the higher you go up the ladder, the more people see of your ass. And I think that's when you...
That's brilliant.
I think that's when you need the credibility, and that's when hard work comes in, and that's where authenticity comes in. Now, you struck on something there that I've written down. When you talk about pride and everything, what is a strong leader now? What's the definition of strong in the sales industry or elsewhere?
You know what? A strong leader is someone that people want to follow. If I look back at my entire career, the best leaders, the ones that really get the best out of people, are the ones that people want to follow, the ones that people are inspired by, the ones that have done it and are still doing it, the ones that lead by example, the ones that are, connectable, that they want to get to know you, but you still respect their position. They're the ones that install belief. They've done it, they've been there, and they're still doing it. They believe in their product, they believe in the business, they believe in the vision, and they believe in you. A strong leader is someone who can take a team or take an individual and help them be the best that they can be. And that comes from a variety of key things, but it comes down to belief. I think there are a lot of sales leaders out there that not necessarily installing belief, but installing fear or installing control. And I've not seen that work very effectively in many, if any, businesses. So for me, I'd say the key is belief. You want to have your team believe in you and believe in your business. And for them to do that, you need to believe in it. You can't lead successfully from behind the desk. You need to be hands-on. You need to be able to pick up the phone. You need to be able to go out to a meeting. If they're struggling with something, you need to be able to go in and help them, and then help them understand what they could have done differently. If you can't physically help them, then bring in the right people that can. In sales, you don't have to have sold in that industry. You don't have to. Some great leaders that don't necessarily have a huge sales career, but what they're able to do is bring in the right people to provide the right support. They're there guiding the ship through smooth seas, the choppy seas, through to success.
Yeah, they've got the vision, haven't they? They've got the vision to do it. And they're usually people. They're usually people that have kept in contact with people from various different industries, and they know that they can pick up the talents and put them in somewhere else. So with everything that you've done, so you talk to a lot of senior sales leaders and salespeople in general. So you've got that. With your own experiences from sales leadership, with everything that you're seeing on the social side, I know you've got a keen interest in health and well-being as well, which is why gratefully you were so keen to do something like this and share it. May I ask you, Daniel Disney, what is your definition of well-being?
So my definition of well-being, and I kind of alluded to it earlier on, but well-being for me is balance. It's about having balance in your life, balance in your mind, balance in your body. It's about trying to put the right things in and trying to make sure the right efforts are going out. I'll give you an example. Again, I'm not perfect. For the last 3 years through this journey of going self-employed and trying to build up a business and a brand, the one thing I've neglected massively was my health. And I've not eaten or exercised in any beneficial way for the last few years. And, I put on nearly 3 stone, I think, in the last 3 or 4 years through neglect. And I'm someone who actually enjoys being active. I enjoy eating good and healthy food, but for all variety of excuses, I didn't give it the right attention. And it starts to have an effect on work and business. And, especially in what I do, getting on stage, getting in front of audiences, you want to try and make sure you look your best. You've got the energy, especially for me, I'm a very energetic type person. So as we kind of went into lockdown, I found I had a bit more time where I wasn't traveling all the time, through the UK, through the world. Now was the right time to invest in it. And the impact that's had on me, my mindset, my physical well-being, my business, my work has been tremendous. And it's just little changes, going and exercising at some form on a daily basis. Some days it's just a walk. Some days it's a cycle, some days it's, you know, a PT session, and eating better things and drinking water. You know, I can sit here and sometimes, you know, I told you earlier, I work pretty long days and I'll chug through plenty of coffees in that time to try and get through what I need. The coffee isn't really the best fuel. Actually drinking the proper amount of water, it's little things like that that can have a big, you know, impact. And so when I look at well-being, it's physical well-being like that. The positive impact of that is great for me. For mental, psychological well-being, I try to make sure I read books as much as I can, listen to podcasts, listen to, you know, anything that's going to help me progress. But I also make sure I have rest and stop time and time with my family and time with my friends and things like that, that then I don't have to think about work. I can switch off and I can relax. If I, you know, and this is what's kind of joined it together, but when I go for a walk or a cycle, I'm not connected to my phone. I'm not looking at social media. I'm not working, and, you know, I'm not having to do anything else or having to be a dad or a partner. I get to just be me, go out there, and I get to relax. And it's finding the balance of that. Well-being is balance. It's making sure when you're at work, you work hard, you do your job, you do everything in your power to over-deliver for any of your partners and your customers. It's doing everything in those kind of right. So I see myself as a tool, in a sense, as a vehicle, and I want to make sure I look after that in all aspects. I want to be as successful as I can as a business person, as successful as I can as an author, as a speaker. I want to be as successful as I can as a father, as a partner. And, you know, in all those areas, I want to try and be the best that I can be. And life is just a learning curve of ups and downs to help you kind of get there. Sometimes you fail, sometimes you struggle, sometimes it's a challenge, but having that kind of determination to get there helps you get through it. So yes, going back to your original point, well-being, for me, is balance.
And you know what? You've hit the nail on the head, and we've talked about it a lot in this discussion, which is you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be teetotal. You don't have to give up everything. Like just chill out, relax, have one eye on health and fitness, and be the best you. At Wellity, we normalize the conversation around mental health, particularly in the sales industry, to create an environment where everyone can be the best they can be for onward development, professional and personally. I can't thank you enough with your following to come on here and share that message to your audience as well. So I just wanted to say how much we appreciate your input in normalizing this conversation, because you have a terrific reach. So I'd just like to say a massive thank you, Daniel. I'm sure we will talk again and again and again. I'd certainly like to this end. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I think my final sort of message and thought to everyone is just enjoy life. Just be happy. Happiness comes in many different ways. If there's anything that drives me, it's just this sort of endless desire to just be happy in everything I do. I'm happy on stage. I'm happy having this chat with you, Simon. I'm happy making memes. I'm happy writing books. I'll find the happiness through all of it. They're all challenging. They all come, we've had to open up. It's emotional. We've had to, you know, all these things will have challenges, but there's always the opportunity to be happy. There is always a bright side to kind of look at things. So look, Simon, thank you so much for having me on this. I think what you're doing is fantastic. You've got my full support, and I'm going to make sure, you know, my audiences get to see this message. We'll bring you on to the Daily Sales for a live session soon. And I'd love to chat. I think we could chat for hours, if not days, about sales and well-being and leadership. And I hope, you know, we get to do more of these, because if there's anything I am more passionate about, it's helping people. So
thank you.
It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your kind words. Now, I'm sure they'll be able to find you, because that is, you know, in essence, your occupation. You're not going to be hard to find. But where can people find you, get your content, and digest what you're putting out there to the industry? Yeah,
so LinkedIn is my main home. So you can find me, Daniel Disney, on LinkedIn. DanielDisney.online is the website. The Daily Sales is on all social media networks. So if anyone has any questions, if anyone wants to talk, you know, obviously, please do go to Simon first. But if there's anything I can help with, please do approach me. I try and respond to all messages as quickly as I can. And like I say, keen to help anyone I can.
Great. And we'll put this on the Wellity platform so people can come up here and find all your details there. Daniel Disney, thank you ever so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Simon.